influenced by his religious views, and also by how little was known about the mechanistic basis of consciousness at this time. However, this Cartesian dualism, relating to differences between body and mind, has been a problematic feature of discussions about consciousness ever since. In the late 17th and early 18th centuries, other philosophers became more willing to subject consciousness in all its aspects to scientific inquiry. John Locke and then David Hume argued that the mind could be viewed as a blank slate, and each individual human consciousness, therefore, was just the accumulation of experiences acquired since birth. Although a properly materialist view of consciousness, meaning an explanation of the human mind without recourse to supernatural causes, a problem with this understanding was that it did not explain how each individual mind feels like a unified, individual phenomenon, rather than just a mass of unconnected experiences. In fact, we will see later that this binding problem has become a major issue of debate and study in modern neuroscience. Another problem with Locke and Hume's view of the mind is that by ignoring the role of differences in individual biology in the formation of consciousness, they did not explain why two different people growing up in a very similar environment can turn out radically different in their abilities, personality, temperament, and so on. This viewpoint also failed to explain why human consciousness seems so different from that of animals. One philosopher of this period who did engage with the question of how human consciousness might be related to our biology was Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. He suggested that the inner workings of the mind might be likened to the different pieces of machinery in a textile mill, a striking new phenomenon in the 18th century. Yet he claimed that even if one could explore in detail the insides of such a mind, while this could reveal its components, it was unlikely to take us any closer to understanding the human mind, partly because of the deeply subjective nature of each individual human consciousness, but also because of the complexity of the interactions between the mind's individual parts. Hard problem. Leibniz's skepticism about the possibility of a truly materialist explanation of consciousness might be seen as justified given how little was known about the brain at that time. Yet while scientific knowledge about this organ has advanced dramatically, it is not clear that we are any closer to a proper understanding of consciousness. The philosopher David Chalmers has expressed this conundrum by what he calls the hard problem of consciousness. Chalmers believes that neuroscience may soon allow us to understand how we learn, store memories, perceive things, react instantly to a painful stimulus, or hear our names spoken across a room at a noisy party. Indeed, he thinks these may be relatively easy aspects of consciousness to decipher, at least with sufficient research, time, and money. In contrast, Chalmers sees the hard problem of consciousness as explaining that subjective sense we have as individuals of being us, with all that implies in terms of our specific responses to, say, a sunset or a work of art, the particular way we felt when we first fell in love, or any personal experience, in purely material terms. It is the difficulty in explaining such subjectivity that has led some to view the problem of explaining consciousness in this way as ultimately impossible. However, surely this viewpoint does not take us much further than we got with Descartes, at least if our aim is a materialistic view of consciousness. Indeed, some critics have accused Chalmers and other proponents of the hard problem of clinging to the idea of a soul that is forever unknowable to scientific methods, just like that of Descartes. My personal feeling is that Chalmers has identified a real problem for explanations of consciousness that seek to describe it in purely material terms. Yet I do not believe it is an insurmountable problem for science, for reasons I will outline later. The debate about whether we will ever understand the material nature of consciousness is not just one between philosophers on one side and neuroscientists on the other. Daniel Dennett is a philosopher, but one who has also championed a very materialist view of consciousness. Dennett is a critic of ideas.